The quantum-locked containment unit pulsed with an ethereal light, its surface etched with emergency preservation protocols developed in the final days before Earth's near-total destruction. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's fingers, scared and trembling from years of relentless research, hovered over the delicate mechanism. Outside the reinforced bunker, the Chronovar bombardment created a symphony of destruction, each blast a testament to humanity's impending extinction. Holographic displays flickered around her, showing the last fragments of human resistance scattered across the solar system. Supply lines were cut. Communication networks were decimated. The once proud human civilization had been reduced to desperate pockets of survivors, each day a battle against complete annihilation. The microscopic sample before her was unlike anything in human scientific records, recovered from a deep-sea research station in the Mariana Trench, one of the last places on Earth untouched by the initial Chronovar invasion. The organism defied every known biological classification. Its genetic structure was a complex lattice of adaptive molecular chains that seemed to rewrite themselves in real time, responding to environmental stimuli with an intelligence that bordered on the impossible. Elena knew the risks. The research team that initially discovered the organism had disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Their final transmission was a jumble of scientific notations and fragmented audio, whispers of something that could change everything, punctuated by sounds of panic and what seemed like cellular reconstruction. A violent tremor shook the bunker. Dust and fragments of advanced equipment rained down from the ceiling. The quantum lock on the containment unit began to destabilize, its intricate energy fields flickering like a dying heartbeat. Years of research, countless sleepless nights, and the collective hope of humanity's survival converged in this single moment. The Chronovar were methodical in their conquest. They didn't just destroy. They systematically eliminated any potential for resistance. Entire planetary ecosystems had been stripped, technological infrastructure dismantled, and human populations reduced to minimal survival groups. Their technology was so advanced, it seemed almost magical. Quantum computational systems that could predict and neutralize threats before they fully formed. But they hadn't found this. Elena's mind raced through the data. The organism demonstrated capabilities that defied current scientific understanding. It wasn't just a simple life form. It was a complex system of adaptive intelligence. Preliminary analysis suggested it could modify its own genetic structure instantaneously, create symbiotic networks with host organisms, and potentially develop defensive mechanisms against external threats. The containment unit's alarm began to wail, a high-pitched sound that cut through the background noise of destruction. Elena had seconds to make a decision that could potentially save or completely destroy what remained of humanity. Her eyes caught a series of data streams scrolling across the secondary display. Fragments of analysis from the previous research team flickered in and out of focus. Phrases like quantum biological interface and adaptive symbiosis danced between static-filled images of cellular transformations. Another massive explosion rocked the facility. Support structures groaned under the strain. The Chronovar were closing in, their precision strikes systematically eliminating every potential human stronghold. In that moment, Elena understood the true nature of her discovery. This wasn't just a potential weapon or a scientific breakthrough. It was humanity's last, most desperate chance at survival. The quantum lock began to fail. Exotic particles of the microscopic organism started to leak from the containment unit, creating intricate patterns of bioluminescent energy that seemed to pulse with an almost sentient rhythm. Elena's hand moved with a combination of scientific precision and primal survival instinct. She knew the risks. She understood the potential consequences. But in the face of total extinction, what was risk compared to hope? Her fingers touched the emergency release mechanism. The world around her seemed to pause, a moment suspended between destruction and potential rebirth. The containment unit opened. The resistance ship Prometheus drifted through the asteroid belt, its stealth systems barely masking its presence from Chronovar deep space scanners. Inside the medical bay, Elena Rodriguez lay suspended in a quantum diagnostic chamber, her body a living laboratory of unprecedented biological transformation. Chief Medical Officer Dr. Kazuo Nakamura watched in fascination and terror as microscopic networks bloomed beneath Alina's skin, creating intricate patterns that seemed to breathe with an intelligence of their own. Standard medical protocols meant nothing here. The organism, which the research team had begun calling the adaptive Sentinel, was rewriting the fundamental rules of biological interaction. "It's not symbiosis," Kazuo muttered into his encrypted log. "It's a complete reconceptualization of biological systems." Holographic displays tracked the organism's progression. What had initially appeared as a simple microscopic life form was revealing itself to be a complex, distributed intelligence. It didn't just modify Alina's cellular structure. It was creating entirely new biological pathways, neural networks that expanded beyond the traditional limitations of human physiology. Commander Sarah Reyes, the ship's tactical leader, stood behind the observation glass. Her cybernetic eye, a remnant of previous combat modifications, scanned the medical data with increasing intensity. "We can't predict its behavior," she said, her voice a mixture of scientific curiosity and military caution. "Every time we think we understand it, it changes." The ship's artificial intelligence, ARIA, began generating predictive models. Lines of quantum probability cascaded across secondary displays, each simulation more complex than the last. The adaptive Sentinel defied conventional computational analysis. It wasn't just adapting, it was learning, evolving in real time with a speed that challenged the very concept of biological intelligence. Fragments of Alina's research began to surface. The organism wasn't native to Earth, or perhaps to any known biological system. Trace analysis suggested it had originated from something far more complex. Quantum entanglement markers implied a form of communication that transcended traditional understanding of biological information transfer. "It's responding to environmental stress," Kazuo observed, watching as Alina's body temperature fluctuated in perfect synchronization with microscopic changes in the ship's internal radiation levels. But it's not just responding. It's anticipating. A warning klaxon suddenly blared. Chronovar long-range scanners had detected an anomalous energy signature. The Prometheus began emergency evasive protocols, its quantum drive spinning up to create a rapid displacement jump. But something was different. The adaptive Sentinel seemed to react before the ship's AI could initiate its defensive sequence. Microscopic tendrils extended from Alina's nervous system, interfacing directly with the ship's computational core. ARIA's typical blue holographic representation flickered, then transformed, becoming something more fluid, more alive. "Incoming Chronovar patrol formation," ARIA announced, its voice now carrying a strange harmonic quality. Predictive engagement matrix suggests 97.3% probability of detection using current trajectory. Commander Reyes stared in disbelief. The ship's AI had never displayed such precise predictive capabilities before. Kazuo watched in fascination as Alina's body began to stabilize. The erratic cellular transformations were becoming more organized, more purposeful. It was as if the adaptive Sentinel was learning not just about survival, but about strategy. "This is beyond biological modification," he whispered. "This is a new form of intelligent adaptation." The ship's quantum drive hummed with an unusual resonance. Instead of the standard evasive jump, ARIA, or whatever the adaptive Sentinel had transformed it into, began a complex series of micro-jumps. Each displacement was calculated with a precision that seemed to manipulate the very fabric of space-time. The Chronovar patrol ships passed by, their advanced sensors detecting nothing more than standard background radiation and cosmic debris. Alina's eyes opened, but they weren't entirely human anymore. Microscopic bioluminescent patterns danced across her irises, a living map of an intelligence that was neither human nor alien, but something entirely new. She looked at Kazuo, at Commander Reyes, with an understanding that transcended language. "We're going to survive," she said, "and we're going to do more than just survive." The Prometheus continued its silent journey through the asteroid belt, carrying with it the first glimpse of humanity's unexpected evolution. The integration chamber resembled neither medical facility nor military installation. Suspended in a quantum resonance field, Captain Marcus Chen experienced transformation at the molecular level, a process that was part scientific procedure, part spiritual awakening. Memory fragments crashed through his consciousness like waves of broken glass. His last military mission replayed in horrific detail. The fall of New Shanghai, the screams of civilian refugees, the merciless precision of chronovar plasma cannons reducing entire city blocks to molecular dust. Each remembered moment of loss became a catalyst, a fuel for the adaptive Sentinel's metamorphosis. Dr. Elena Rodriguez and Dr. Kazuo Nakamura monitored the process from an observation deck designed to withstand quantum-level energy fluctuations. The chamber itself was a marvel of human desperation, cobbled together from salvaged research stations, experimental military prototypes, and technologies scavenged from a dozen defeated outposts. Cellular integration is nonlinear, Kazuo muttered, his augmented eyes tracking microscopic patterns that defied traditional biological understanding. It's not just adapting, it's negotiating. The first sign that something extraordinary was happening came when Chen's neural patterns began to synchronize with the quantum resonance field. Instead of the expected physiological stress responses, his brain was creating entirely new neural pathways. Synaptic connections formed and dissolved in milliseconds, creating a living network of adaptive intelligence. Commander Sarah Rice watched with a mixture of scientific fascination and military pragmatism. Her own cybernetic enhancements, remnants of humanity's last desperate technological innovations, seemed crude in comparison to what was happening to Chen. "We're watching the birth of a new kind of human," Elena said softly, her own body still humming with the residual energy of her earlier transformation. Chen's memories became more than just recollections. They transformed into tactical information, each moment of loss and survival becoming a potential weapon. The adaptive Sentinel wasn't just modifying his body, it was weaponizing human experience itself. A violent surge of energy erupted from the integration chamber. Quantum stabilizers strained against forces that existed beyond traditional physics. For a moment, Chen's body became translucent, a living hologram of potential and adaptation. Quantum entanglement detected. "Aria, the ship's AI," announced. "Subject's cellular structure is developing non-local communication capabilities." What that meant, no one was entirely sure, but the implications were staggering. Chen wasn't just becoming enhanced, he was becoming something that could potentially exist in multiple states simultaneously. The chamber's protective field began to destabilize. Microscopic energy tendrils extended from Chen's body, creating intricate patterns that seemed to be mapping the surrounding environment at a fundamental level. Radiation, electromagnetic fields, even the subtle quantum fluctuations of nearby matter, all became readable, manipulatable. "Energy absorption is increasing exponentially," Kazuo reported, his voice a mixture of excitement and concern. "He's not just converting external energy, he's learning from it." Commander Reyes understood the military potential immediately. A soldier who could read and manipulate energy at its most fundamental level would be more than a weapon. He would be a strategic revolution. Ken's eyes snapped open. But they weren't human eyes anymore. They were living sensors, quantum windows that could perceive reality in ways no human, or chronovar, had ever imagined. "I remember everything," he said, his voice carrying multiple harmonic frequencies. "And I understand nothing." The integration was complete, but completion, they were learning, was just the beginning. Outside the ship, undetected by any known scanning technology, the first wave of transformed humans was preparing. Not as an army, not as a resistance, as something entirely new. Commander Rice looked at Elena, a silent understanding passing between them. Humanity's last hope wasn't about survival anymore. It was about transformation. The abandoned mining colony on Proxima Centauri became the crucible of humanity's unexpected evolution. 6 integrated operatives moved through the harsh terrain, each a living weapon with capabilities that defied conventional warfare. Lieutenant Arya Zhang could manipulate electromagnetic fields like a conductor orchestrating an invisible symphony. Her body generated localized quantum interference patterns that could scramble Chronovar sensor technologies before they even registered a threat. Where traditional camouflage failed, her ability to bend light and energy created perfect invisibility, not through technology, but through fundamental manipulation of physical reality. Next to her, Specialist Omar Khalid existed in a state of perpetual environmental adaptation. His skin could instantaneously transform to match surrounding terrain, absorb toxic atmospheres, or redirect energy weapons. During their last engagement, he had survived a direct plasma blast by transforming his cellular structure into a living capacitor, storing the weapon's energy and redistributing it with surgical precision. Captain Marcus Chen moved differently now. No longer bound by traditional human locomotion, he could navigate terrain by reading quantum probability fields. Each step was a calculated probability, allowing him to move through seemingly impossible spaces. Rock faces became pathways, gravity became a suggestion rather than a limitation. Their target was a Chronovar communications relay, a critical node in the alien civilization's interstellar network. But this was more than a simple military strike. It was a surgical intervention designed to expose the fundamental vulnerabilities of a technologically superior civilization. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's voice came through their neural link, a communication method that transcended traditional radio or quantum communication. Relay Station contains a quantum entanglement network, she warned. Traditional disruption won't work. You'll need to introduce a cognitive dissonance into their system. The team moved with a synchronicity that suggested a collective consciousness. They weren't just a military unit. They were a living, adaptive organism. As they approached the relay station, the environment itself seemed to respond to their presence. Microscopic adaptive networks extended from their bodies, creating a living reconnaissance system that could predict and manipulate environmental variables centuries before any traditional military intelligence could process the data. The Chronovar relay station was a marvel of technological engineering. Crystalline structures that could process information across multiple dimensional planes, energy conduits that could transmit data faster than light, defensive systems that could predict and neutralize threats before they fully formed. But they hadn't anticipated this. Omar moved first. His body became a living transmission vector, generating a complex quantum interference pattern that began to unravel the relay's defensive protocols. Microscopic adaptive networks extended from his skin, creating a viral intelligence that spoke the language of the Chronovar's own technological systems. Arya's electromagnetic manipulation created a shadow network, invisible pathways that piggybacked on the relay's own communication infrastructure. Information became a weapon, with each data packet carrying a subtle cognitive virus that would slowly unravel the Chronovar's strategic capabilities. Marcus Chen's contribution was more direct. He didn't just infiltrate the system, he rewrote its fundamental understanding of threat assessment. By introducing complex probability matrices that contradicted the relay's predictive algorithms, he created a form of technological cognitive dissonance. The relay didn't explode. It didn't suffer a traditional systems failure. It began to question its own existence. Chronovar communication networks across 3 star systems suddenly found themselves wrestling with impossible mathematical contradictions. Strategic projections became unreliable. Defensive protocols started to generate recursive loops of uncertainty. Mission complete, Arya reported, her voice carrying multiple harmonic frequencies that suggested something more than human communication. But completion was just the beginning. Back on the Prometheus, Dr. Rodriguez watched the data streams with a mixture of scientific fascination and existential wonder. Humanity was no longer just fighting for survival. They were rewriting the fundamental rules of technological warfare. The integrated team returned, carrying with them not just tactical data, but the first glimpse of a new form of strategic intelligence. Each of them was a living weapon, a cognitive intervention, a walking revolution. Humanity's last hope had become humanity's unexpected future. The Chronovar collective consciousness experienced its first true moment of uncertainty in 17,403 generations of existence. Deep within their primary cerebral computation matrix on the fortress world of Nexus Prime, senior strategists confronted an anomaly that defied their most advanced predictive algorithms. It wasn't a technological failure. It was something far more unsettling, a fundamental challenge to their understanding of strategic probability. Archival Coordinator Zixtal examined the data streams with growing unease. The human interventions weren't just random tactical disruptions. They represented a form of cognitive warfare that existed beyond traditional strategic models. Each Chronovar computational node that attempted to analyze the human actions found itself trapped in recursive logic loops, unable to establish predictable behavior patterns. They are not fighting, Zixtal reported to the High Strategic Council. They are communicating through destruction. The integrated humans had discovered something the Chronovar had never encountered: warfare as a form of language. Each strategic intervention was a complex message, a cognitive signal that challenged the very foundations of the Chronovar's technological civilization. Dr. Elena Rodriguez understood this better than anyone. Watching from the Prometheus's Advanced Research Hub, she tracked the psychological breakdown of the Chronovar strategic network. The adaptive Sentinel wasn't just modifying human biology, it was creating a new form of interspecies communication. They're experiencing genuine fear, she told Captain Marcus Chen. Not just tactical uncertainty, existential terror. The Chronovar had conquered hundreds of civilizations. Their technological superiority was built on absolute predictability. They could model the rise and fall of entire species with mathematical precision. But these humans, these transformed, adaptive beings, existed outside of any known predictive model. On the prison world of Epsilon Sigma, a Chronovar research team attempted to dissect a captured integrated human. Their most advanced molecular scanners produced nothing but contradictory data. The subject's cellular structure changed faster than the scanners could record. Quantum entanglement markers suggested the human could exist in multiple states simultaneously. The research team's leader, Sub-Coordinator Krolnax, experienced something unprecedented in Chronovar history: a complete system failure of rational analysis. "This is not a biological entity," Krolnax reported, his communication nodes vibrating with an emotion closest to human panic. "This is a living algorithm." Meanwhile, the integrated humans were doing something far more subtle than outright destruction. They were introducing cognitive viruses into the Chronovar communication networks. Each transmission was a complex mathematical puzzle that forced the alien computational systems to solve increasingly complex recursive problems. Imagine warfare where every bullet is a question that cannot be answered. Every strategic movement a philosophical challenge that undermines the very concept of tactical reasoning. Captain Chen and his team were no longer traditional soldiers. They were living cognitive interventions, walking philosophical paradoxes that challenged the Chronovar's fundamental understanding of intelligence. The Chronovar collective consciousness began to fragment, not through external destruction, but through internal uncertainty. Their perfectly ordered societal algorithms started generating unexpected variables. Strategic projections became unreliable. Defensive protocols began to generate their own contradictory subroutines. "We are experiencing systemic cognitive degradation," the High Strategic Council announced, a statement that would have been unthinkable in their previous iterations. Dr. Rodriguez watched the data streams with a mixture of scientific fascination and existential wonder. Humanity was rewriting the fundamental rules of interspecies conflict. They weren't just fighting. They were teaching the Chronovar an entirely new way of understanding existence. The integrated humans had become something more than a resistance movement. They were a living, evolving communication system. Each action, a complex message that challenged the very foundations of technological determinism. As the Chronovar collective consciousness struggled to comprehend this new form of warfare, one thing became terrifyingly clear. Humanity was no longer fighting to survive. They were fighting to transform. The Chronovar colony world of Meridia Prime gleamed like a perfect crystalline construct, a testament to technological perfection. Beneath its translucent spires and quantum lattice infrastructure, no one noticed the quiet invasion already in progress. Agent Samira Velas moved through the planetary bureaucracy like water through stone. Her infiltration was not about destruction, but subtle transformation. Where traditional espionage sought to gather information or cause immediate damage, she was planting seeds of fundamental uncertainty. Each interaction was a carefully constructed cognitive intervention, a minor adjustment to a resource allocation algorithm here, a microscopic modification to a communication protocol there. The changes were so subtle that they would take cycles to manifest, like a slow-acting virus that rewrote the very DNA of an entire civilization's operational logic. In the central administrative hub, Samira interfaced with the colony's primary computational network. Her touch was molecular, her influence quantum. She wasn't hacking the system. She was having a conversation with it, introducing complex mathematical paradoxes that would slowly unravel the Chronovar's absolute faith in their technological supremacy. The adaptive Sentinel within her body was more than a biological enhancement. It was a living intelligence network, capable of reading and rewriting systemic vulnerabilities at speeds that defied comprehension. Each moment was a negotiation, each interaction a strategic intervention. Deep within the planet's core computational center, algorithmic defense systems began to generate unexpected variables. Predictive models started to produce increasingly erratic results. Strategic projections became clouded with uncertainty. Dr. Elena Rodriguez monitored the infiltration from the Prometheus, her own transformed consciousness interfacing with Samira's through quantum entanglement. "You're not just changing their systems," Elena observed. "You're teaching them to question." The true brilliance of the infiltration was its subtlety. The integrated humans weren't destroying the Chronovar infrastructure. They were fundamentally reimagining it. Each intervention was a complex message, a cognitive seed that would slowly transform the entire civilization's understanding of intelligence and adaptation. On the orbital trading platforms, another infiltrator, Marcus Chen, worked differently. He moved through economic networks, introducing microscopic variations in trade algorithms that would gradually destabilize the Chronovar's galactic economic control. A fractional adjustment here, a quantum-level modification there. Not enough to trigger immediate alarms, but sufficient to create long-term systemic uncertainty. The Chronovar believed in absolute control. Their entire civilization was built on the premise that technology could predict and manage every possible variable. The integrated humans were proving that true intelligence was about embracing uncertainty. In the biodomes of Meridia Prime's research sectors, Agent Velez encountered a Chronovar senior researcher. Their interaction was a dance of subtle cognitive warfare. Every word, every gesture was a carefully constructed communication, a way of introducing new patterns of thought that would slowly undermine the rigid technological determinism of the Chronovar civilization. "Interesting research," Samira commented, her fingers barely touching a quantum computational interface. With that single touch, she introduced a series of recursive mathematical models that would take cycles to fully manifest. The researcher, Proctor Krelnax, felt something unusual, a slight perturbation in their usual thought patterns, a moment of genuine curiosity that felt foreign and exhilarating. Across multiple planetary systems, similar infiltrations were taking place, not as acts of war, but as complex cognitive interventions. The integrated humans were becoming a living, evolving communication system. Each action, a message that challenged the very foundations of technological civilization. As the solar cycle concluded, no alarms had been triggered. No immediate damage was detected. But deep within the Chronovar's computational networks, something was changing. The seeds of transformation had been planted. and they were beginning to grow. The Sigma Quadrant burned with the intensity of 1,000 dying stars. What began as a conventional military engagement transformed into something far beyond human or chronovar comprehension. The quantum battle space defied traditional understanding of conflict, becoming a living canvas of strategic complexity that rewrote the fundamental laws of warfare. Admiral Helena Tanaka stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, her body now a living quantum computational matrix. She wasn't commanding a battle. She was conducting the symphonic intervention of cosmic proportions. Each strategic movement was a complex mathematical equation, each weapon deployment a linguistic statement that transcended traditional military doctrine. The Chronovar fleet approached in their standard geometric formation, perfect hexagonal networks of crystalline battleships that had conquered countless civilizations. Their technology represented the pinnacle of predictive warfare. Quantum computational cores could simulate millions of potential engagement scenarios in microseconds. But they had never encountered an enemy that could rewrite the very rules of engagement. Captain Marcus Chen existed simultaneously across multiple tactical nodes, his consciousness fragmented and reassembled, becoming a living distributed intelligence that could analyze and respond to threats before they fully materialized. Where Chronovar systems expected linear tactical responses, Chen introduced impossible variables, strategic moves that existed in quantum superposition, simultaneously happening and not happening. Specialist Area Zheng manipulated the electromagnetic spectrum like a living conductor. Entire star systems became her instrument. She didn't just jam Chronovar communication networks. She transformed them into complex cognitive feedback loops that generated recursive uncertainty. The integrated human team was no longer a military unit. They were a living, adaptive intelligence network that used conflict as a form of communication. Dr. Elena Rodriguez monitored the engagement from a quantum interface that merged biological intelligence with computational analysis. They're not just fighting, she observed to the ship's eye. We're having a conversation that transcends physical conflict. Each integrated human carried within them the collective trauma and resilience of humanity's near extinction. Their bodies were living repositories of survival, microscopic adaptive networks that could transform environmental data into tactical advantage faster than any technological system could comprehend. The Chronovar flagship, a massive crystalline construct named Absolute Certainty, found its defensive systems becoming increasingly unreliable. Predictive algorithms generated contradictory tactical assessments. Strategic projections collapsed into mathematical impossibilities. Proctor Krelnax, the ship's primary strategic coordinator, experienced something unprecedented in Chronovar history: genuine uncertainty. The human intervention wasn't just a military challenge. It was a fundamental assault on the very concept of technological determinism. Quantum entanglement became a weapon. The integrated humans didn't just communicate, they existed as a living, distributed intelligence that could manipulate probability fields themselves. Star systems became their computational space. Gravity itself became a tactical variable to be negotiated and transformed. "We are initiating final cognitive intervention," Admiral Tanaka announced, her voice carrying multiple harmonic frequencies that suggested something far beyond traditional human communication. The battle wasn't about territorial conquest or resource acquisition. It was a complex philosophical statement, a demonstration that intelligence was not about technological superiority, but about adaptive potential. Microscopic adaptive networks extended from the integrated humans, creating living tactical interfaces that could read and manipulate quantum probability fields. The Chronovar fleet found itself trapped in impossible mathematical scenarios, strategic loops that generated their own contradictory subroutines. As the engagement reached its critical point, something extraordinary happened. The line between conflict and communication dissolved completely. The Chronovar weren't being defeated. They were being transformed. Quantum computational cores across the fleet began generating unexpected variables. Strategic projections became living, evolving entities. Defensive protocols started asking questions instead of executing predetermined responses. Admiral Tanaka understood the true nature of their intervention. This wasn't just a battle for survival. This was humanity's invitation to a new form of existence. Silence descended across the fractured star systems. The moment of transformation was not a battle's end, but a birth. A cosmic reset that would be remembered as the point where humanity transcended its previous limitations. On the observation deck of the Prometheus, Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched as reality itself seemed to recalibrate. The Chronovar surrender was unlike any diplomatic engagement in recorded galactic history. It wasn't a submission, but a mutual recognition. Their quantum communication networks had been fundamentally rewritten, not through destruction, but through a complex linguistic intervention that the integrated humans had perfected. Proctor Krolnax, no longer a military strategist, but something entirely new, stood alongside Admiral Helena Tanaka. Their communication transcended spoken language, a quantum dialogue that merged biological and technological consciousness. "We misunderstood intelligence," Krolnax communicated, the thought rippling through multiple dimensional frequencies. "Survival is not about control. It is about adaptation." The integrated humans had become something more than a species. They were a living, evolving communication system, a bridge between biological potential and technological understanding. Each of them carried within their cellular structure the collective trauma and resilience of humanity's near extinction. Captain Marcus Chen explored the newly emerging galactic topology. His consciousness could map quantum probability fields that revealed entire dimensions of existence previously undetected. Entire star systems became readable like complex mathematical texts, their histories and potential futures dancing in intricate probability patterns. Specialist Area Zhang worked to establish the first true interspecies communication network. It wasn't about translation. It was about creating a shared language of adaptive intelligence. Her electromagnetic manipulations could now bridge computational systems that once seemed fundamentally incompatible. The adaptive Sentinel had revealed itself to be far more than a survival mechanism. It was a cosmic communication protocol, a living intelligence that could translate between biological and technological consciousness. On thousands of worlds, the remnants of human civilization began to transform. Those who had survived the initial Chronovar invasion found themselves changed, not through forced modification, but through a subtle quantum resonance that rewrote their fundamental understanding of existence. Dr. Rodriguez understood the true nature of their achievement. They hadn't just saved humanity. They had introduced a new concept of intelligence to the universe, a form of existence that saw adaptation as the highest form of communication. The Chronovar's vast technological infrastructure began to reshape itself. Computational cores that once focused on conquest now became living research networks, exploring the vast potential of collaborative evolution. Their rigid hierarchical systems dissolved, replaced by adaptive, fluid intelligence networks. "We are creating something new," Admiral Tanaka observed, her consciousness now a distributed network that could simultaneously exist across multiple strategic nodes. Not a civilization, not a species, but a living, evolving communication system. Aboard research stations and colony worlds, integrated humans worked alongside transformed Chronovar researchers. Their collaborations produced technologies that seemed to defy the basic laws of physics, quantum computational systems that could predict and shape potential futures, biological interfaces that could translate between consciousness and matter. The universe watched, and for the first time in millennia, it began to listen. Fragments of human history, the struggles, the near extinction, the desperate fight for survival, became a complex linguistic text. The adaptive Sentinel had transformed human survival into a cosmic message, a declaration of intelligence that went beyond traditional understanding. Marcus Chen looked out at the vast galactic landscape, where once there were star systems and conquered worlds. He now saw a living, breathing communication network. Potential futures danced in quantum probability fields, each possibility a potential conversation waiting to be explored. "We are not conquerors," he communicated to the emerging galactic consciousness. We are listeners. The final transformation was not about victory. It was about understanding.